I am in Portland, Oregon. I've been attending the trial of United States versus Joseph Astarita, taking notes in this case for litigation that I'm working on, some civil litigation on behalf of Ryan Payne and Victoria Sharpe. As most of you know, they were in a vehicle driven by Lavoy Finicum on January 26, 2018. That vehicle was ambushed, driven into a snowbank, and Lavoy Finicum got out with his hands in the air, was ultimately shot in the back 3 times by 2 different Oregon State police officers. It was something of an ambush. There were also shots fired into the hood and into the grill of the vehicle. And there are unaccounted for shots, and this is why there's this trial going on. Federal trial in the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. A very rare thing is happening. An FBI agent, one of the elite so-called HRT team members, hostage rescue team members, and these guys brag and bill themselves as the most elite sharpshooters in the entire FBI. Anyway, one of them is on trial, Joseph Astarita, for essentially lying and obstructing justice in that investigation. Essentially, I'll just play out a little bit about just to summarize the trial. The trial is entirely circumstantial. There is no direct evidence that no one saw Astarita fire, no one saw Astarita obstruct evidence, pick up shell casings or anything. But basically, he's accused of firing 2 shots, and they're saying that a total of 8 shots were fired. And basically, there's another officer of the Oregon State Police who is already taken, I guess, taken, what would be the word? Taken who admits to shooting the first 3 shots into the grill and into the pickup as Lavoy was approaching the ambush site, the roadblock. And then Officer 1, again, we don't know his real name because of this elaborate protective blanket that's been thrown over this officer. He's an Oregon State Police SWAT team leader. Then he admitted on the stand earlier this week that he moved after Lavoy got out of the vehicle and then moved a little bit over to Lavoy's, I guess, the south as Lavoy was leaving the vehicle, and then he shot Lavoy twice in the back. Of course, with the claim that Lavoy appeared to be reaching into his jacket, and the claim is that, well, he claims that he thought Lavoy might be reaching for a gun and then was about to shoot another Oregon State police officer named, his name now escapes me, but he's also testified in the trial. Anyway, the final shot into Lavoy's back was fired by another Oregon State Police SWAT team member, and they're calling him Officer 2. So Officer 1 and Officer 2 admit or account for at least 6 of the bullets that were fired, and there are 2 bullets that are unaccounted for. And what has happened in the investigation, apparently, the investigation was done by Deschutes County detectives back in 2016, and essentially they discovered there were 2 shots that are unaccounted for, and they asked questions, and everyone said, no, I didn't fire, no, I didn't fire, no, I didn't fire. They looked at the video. Of course, later on, they got the video that was taken by Shauna Cox inside the vehicle, which can be sort of synchronized with the aerial footage. And indeed, there are 2 shots that are unaccounted for that almost hit Lavoy. Just as Lavoy was getting out of the vehicle, 2 shots were fired near his head.
Stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down.
Went down into Ryan Bundy's shoulder, and those shots no one is taking credit for. Deschutes County detectives did a lot of hard work and finally have pinned it on this FBI HRT member named Joseph Astarita. He is on criminal trial. This is a very rare event. Here's what's interesting. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not, whether or not Astarita is convicted or not, to me is not that important for my purposes. But what's getting out is a lot of great information. We are finally learning, the public is finally learning about where these officers were, how this thing was staged, which officer was which. Of course, we don't know their names. They're coming into court under alias names. Some of them show pictures of themselves with bags, paper sacks over their faces. There's an order not even that the public can't even sketch these people. The sketch artist for the newspaper not even allowed to sketch them. But we're getting a lot of great information, and this is actually a fascinating trial. I will say, just sitting in on it every single day thus far, it's a circumstantial case based on, the fact that shell casings were seen by 1 or 2 officers, and then later on not seen, and ultimately they went missing. The suggestion is Astarita obstructed justice by picking them up somehow. Again, it's a circumstantial case. And the evidence, literally it's coming down to, well, do you normally count the number of bullets in your AR-15 magazine? And what's the count normally? It's coming down to the habits of these people in the loading of their magazines. This is a very circumstantial case. Frankly, it's an uphill battle for the prosecution. But the point is, we're getting a lot of great information out for the purposes of the Jeanette Finicum and Finicum family wrongful death lawsuit that is pending, and for my lawsuit, I'm representing Ryan Payne and Victoria Sharpe. They also are in a lawsuit that it's got a few problems I want to discuss very briefly, but we're getting a lot of information. It has come out, and there was an officer who testified on the stand just today that there was no reason to fire the rounds at Ryan Payne. For those of you who don't know the story, there were 2 vehicles, one of which had Ammon Bundy, Brian Cavalier, and several others in it. A Jeep driven by Mark McConnell, an FBI informant. And that vehicle was traveling behind a vehicle driven by Lavoy Finicum, which also had Ryan Payne, Ryan Bundy, Shauna Cox, and Victoria Sharpe. There was an initial traffic stop in which the Jeep driven by McConnell stopped. The pickup driven by Lavoy stopped just briefly to have a little bit of an interchange. And Ryan Payne, again, he's my client. He's currently serving a 37-month federal prison sentence at SeaTac in Seattle. He'll be out probably by November, I believe. But, his rights were violated on that day. There was testimony today that Ryan Payne was in the passenger seat. He stuck his hands out when they were pulled over and they were being shouted at, and then he stuck his head out the window, the passenger side window, and shots were fired at him. Now, the testimony is that those were either gas rounds or rubber bullets, but in any case, there was testimony today that there was no reason whatsoever to fire that shot in the direction of Ryan Payne. And of course, that shot ultimately had a great deal to do with Lavoy essentially leaving the scene after being fired at, if you can imagine. Anyway, as the story goes, Lavoy drove another mile into the snowbank where there was additional violence committed against them. Federal government assaulted them along with the state of Oregon, the Oregon State Police. What I find fascinating is that I've been in discussions with attorneys for the state of Oregon, and they actually want to have these civil lawsuits go on without even naming these people. And I said to him, well, how are we going to serve these lawsuits? It's written. It was filed on the due date by Shauna Cox with a lot of John Does, and this is typical when people have been brutalized or have had their civil rights violated. They will name officers as defendants, and they will name them John Doe 1, John Doe 2, John Doe 3, John Doe 4. In this case, if I should say, it's typical that ultimately when they learn the names through discovery, through depositions, and through interrogatories or whatnot, they then will file an amended complaint replacing the John Doe name with the actual name of the officer. In this case, the government is resisting the right even to ever name the officer, and the attorney for the state of Oregon actually wants a situation where the name Officer 1 will be substituted for John Doe 1. And actually just today I was talking to the clerk of court in the federal court about getting a summons issued. And I said, well, can you issue a summons under the name of Officer 1? And she said, no, you would have to amend your complaint first and change John Doe 1 to Officer 1. I'm not kidding. You can't even make this up. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I'll just say we, you know, obviously neither Ryan Payne nor Victoria Sharpe have a great amount of funding. Victoria Sharpe's a college student in Denver, Colorado. Ryan Payne is in prison and doesn't have any money. I'm doing this thus far more or less pro bono. We are in need of support. Jeanette's in need of support as well, of course. You know, this litigation, you know, we're gonna need some funding to go forward. We're gonna need to take depositions. We're gonna need to, well, serve the other side and engage in a lot of discovery, and in addition to all the legal research. So please support this vital work if you can, and I will try to update everyone very soon.